When Oliver experienced a sharp sting in his feet and realized he had stepped on something peculiar, he didn't give it much consideration. However, upon closer appraisal, he realized that this was no run-of-the-mill rock. Oliver believed he had stumbled upon something remarkable. He decided to take the rock to a gem expert with the ambition of exchanging it for a considerable amount of money. This would certainly affect his life in a profound way. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Oliver was hobbling due to intense agony in his foot. A lifeguard came over to him and asked how he was doing. Oliver thought about keeping the rock to himself, but he was driven to show the lifeguard what he had stepped on. Oliver eventually told the lifeguard about his find. As soon as he opened his palm, the rock started to radiate light. The lifeguard asked for permission to take a look at the stone. Despite his doubt, Oliver gave the lifeguard the item. The rock stopped shining right when he gave it away. The lifeguard was surprised. Oliver was permitted to hold on to the rock by the lifeguard. Oliver let out a breath of contentment. Eventually, Oliver was sorry he took action. He made the choice to go to a jeweler he knew. He presently only believes in this single individual. Oliver abruptly arrived at Mark's jewelry shop and was pleased to see that the store was empty. Mark was startled when he saw Oliver. Oliver began speaking gibberish regarding the exceptionally uncommon gemstone he was attempting to offer. Initially, Mark didn't credit what Oliver was saying, but he chose to take it on faith. Oliver had a sparkly rock, yet Mark thought it was merely a low-cost stone from a store, but the rock suddenly ceased to sparkle when Oliver handed it over to Mark. At the beginning, Mark was totally confused, but then he got it. He needed time, though. Mark was taken aback by the uncovering of the rock. Oliver was conscious of that. It looked like Mark had identified something. Mark told Oliver he would need a day to inspect and verify the stone. Subsequently, he was in a position to propose a decent deal. Despite his reluctance, Oliver agreed to these terms. Oliver was unable to rest for the entire evening. He was perpetually fixated on the rock. There was a possibility it could be worth a great deal of cash. He drifted off to sleep, but was soon roused again, feeling saturated with perspiration. He had a sense that something terrible was about to occur. Oliver made his way back to the Mark the next day. The mood was completely different when I entered the place as compared to the day before. Oliver was no longer welcomed, but he disregarded his doubts and chose anyway, knowing the value of the gemstone was essential for him. Meanwhile, Mark's actions were unbelievably fishy. Once the dialogue started, Mark acted strangely. He strictly prohibited Oliver from handling or viewing the rock. This left Oliver dumbfounded. For goodness sake, what does that involve? The Mark had not been fashioned yet. He launched into an extended diatribe. A gigantic quarrel occurred between Oliver and Mark. Mark would not give Oliver the stone back when requested. Oliver had no power to act that way anymore. With more people in the shop, he calmed down a bit. Eventually, Oliver determined that he had to have his rock back, and Mark unexpectedly showed up in the workspace without warning. He was not able to discover his stone, but he was sure it was still nearby. Once Mark got in, he kept close to Oliver, and the two kept bickering. Ultimately, Mark gave in to the stress. Mark gave Oliver a rock, yet when he inspected it, it did not radiate. When Oliver asked Mark about his connection to the stone, Mark gave made-up answers. Eventually, Oliver became aware that something was off. Mark gave Oliver a phony rock to make him leave because Oliver's true stone was too bulky. To make matters worse, it seemed low cost as well. After Mark tossed a rock in Oliver's direction only to have it come back to him, he realized he was spending his energy deceitfully, attempting to fool Oliver. Mark let out a heavy breath and gave the rock back to Oliver. Even when Oliver had calmed down, Mark told him he had made a huge mistake. Mark made a blunder by not bringing back the rock. He was certain that Oliver would feel very remorseful for what he had done. Before chucking the rock, Oliver moves a few paces away. He can't quit considering what Mark had just articulated. There's no chance this is uplifting news. When Oliver entered his vehicle, he felt uneasy, as if someone was observing him. He was determined to guard the stone, whatever the cost. Nonetheless, what happened next was absolutely unanticipated by Oliver. Everything was okay as they drove off, and Oliver was content to have the rock in his custody. Suddenly, he realizes that a dark van is tailing him. Could it be a coincidence? Oliver made certain by going the same route 3 times. All the while, the dark van stayed behind him. Clearly, this was not a good sign. If Oliver pressed down on the gas pedal, the van would rumble, but it instead sped up. Oliver was petrified. He thought about smashing the window and throwing the rock out, but ultimately stopped himself. With his sharp thinking, Oliver managed to slip away from the truck that had been trailing him. It was now obvious that he had stumbled upon something very amazing. He had to get rid of it right away, yet he was more concerned about his money than his well-being. Tomorrow, Oliver would bring the rock to a distinct jeweler to try to get rid of it. It was already late, and none of the existing jewelers were open. He was determined to get through the night no matter what. Oliver didn't think it was going to be easy. That evening, Oliver was so fidgety that he journeyed to a companion's residence to pass the night. Before he parted with the precious stone, he thought it was critical to present it. He would not have survived if he hadn't visited his acquaintance. Upon coming back, he was completely drained of color. When Oliver arrived home, he saw a multitude of people gathered outside his residence. He had been unaware of the situation previously, but now he comprehended it. Oliver's neighbor spotted him and cautioned him against entering. When Oliver returns to his home, the primary thing he notices is the shattered window. If you look closely, his entrance has been forced open. Despite all the warnings, Oliver decided to enter anyway and was soon filled with tears. Oliver was horrified when he saw the state of his home. He could not believe his eyes. When he realized that nothing had been stolen, he knew they were looking for the stone. He meticulously cleaned his house, and a lot of his belongings were ruined, so he had to contact the law enforcement. The police did not want to be summoned unless there was proof of stealing. Nevertheless, Oliver demanded they be notified. Apparently, this was the only method for the insurance company to cover the loss. The female recipient of the call was not pleased by this, but she promised Oliver that officers would be dispatched. A policeman showed up 30 minutes after the initial contact. Inside the law enforcement vehicle was only one law enforcement worker. Oliver rushed outside to tell him what was happening. Before he came in, he seemed to be treating it with importance. The policeman went in and got a telephone call straight away. As soon as he started to answer, his attitude changed rapidly. Oliver cast a glance at the other person and immediately fell silent. As Oliver looked into the matter, he felt that something was off. When Oliver asked what was going on, the police officer promised him there was nothing to worry about. He asked Oliver to document the incident and said they would look into it afterwards. Oliver questioned why they weren't investigating the robbery, but the officer had no proper answer. When Oliver pressed further, he was ignored. Oliver documented the robbery in full detail, expecting swift action. To his surprise, the police simply returned to their vehicle and left, showing no interest in inspecting the scene. He was left baffled, feeling ignored and uncertain of what was really going on. After thinking it over, Oliver decided he should get rid of the rock. At sunrise, he planned to take it straight to a jewelry shop, but deep down, he feared it was already too late. Whatever forces were interested in the stone were unlikely to stop. Unable to sleep and feeling unsafe, Oliver accepted his neighbor's offer to stay over. He calculated the exact time to reach the jewelry shop. At opening hour, he was already at the door. The jeweler greeted Oliver warmly, as if he had been expecting him. It raised suspicion. Perhaps Mark had told the jeweler about the rock, or there was more to the situation than Oliver understood. The jeweler asked Oliver for his thoughts on the rock. His reaction when seeing it confirmed to Oliver that the stone was special. In the dimly lit room, the jeweler asked Oliver to touch it. As soon as Oliver touched the stone, it emitted a bright glow. The jeweler responded by making a surprisingly generous offer. Oliver was thrilled and convinced he had just struck a fortune. Feeling overjoyed, Oliver quickly accepted the offer without much thought. The jeweler promised to retrieve the money from storage but was taking an unusually long time. Suspicious, Oliver knocked on the door. There was no answer. He began to suspect he was being stalled. Earlier, Oliver had noticed a man in the store giving him a cold, intense stare. The unease stayed with him throughout the day. Then, out of nowhere, he felt a sharp pain, and everything went black. Oliver regained consciousness on the floor, having been attacked from behind. The jeweler returned, speaking with someone to confirm Oliver's identity. Overwhelmed, Oliver broke down in tears. Suddenly, the shop filled with people. Minutes later, Oliver realized federal agents were arriving. He didn't understand why they were after him but assumed it was tied to the rock. The police read him his rights. Disoriented, Oliver was taken into FBI custody and loaded into their vehicle. The experience was too much. Oliver briefly fainted. The officers attempted to revive him. He pleaded to be released, but they had no intention of letting him go. At the FBI branch, Oliver was treated like a dangerous criminal. He was warned that unless he gave a clear explanation, he could face a life sentence. A rock lay before him as agents questioned him about its origins and who else was involved. Stunned, Oliver couldn't respond. He was grouped with suspects who didn't recognize him. Asked for details about supposed accomplices, Oliver was met with confused looks from the group. When he questioned the situation, the officers assured him this was no joke. Calming down, Oliver insisted he knew no one and offered to explain how he found the rock. The agents listened intently and agreed to hear him out. Oliver recounted how he had found the rock while surfing. He showed the strange mark on his foot caused by the stone. The officers, intrigued, decided to investigate. They returned with Oliver to the beach, where he pointed to the approximate location. The investigation began immediately. Luckily, the lifeguard he had spoken with earlier was still there. The lifeguard confirmed Oliver's story and affirmed that he had not stolen anything. With that, the officers began to trust Oliver again and finally explained the truth about the mysterious stone.